What's on my mind today? So the title of today's video doesn't give anything away, which I guess probably isn't such a good thing. Yeah, this is a longer script than usual, so relax and hear me out while you go about doing other things. Think of me like I'm on the radio and you're just tuning in without the need to watch the screen. My voice is a little monotone like my cousin, but the content, at the very least, is thought-provoking. This video of mine could be about anything. It really could, as you, the low number of viewers, don't know what interests me or sways me to talk about. Well, I could talk about MGTOW and how I don't see it changing anything in the future for the United States and England, or even Australia, where I'm not from. Or I could talk about Quiet from the latest boring game from Konami and how Kojima has fooled all of those people saying that she's a sex object, and that's just a start. Now, with Quiet, I see her existence as something quite unexpected. Oh, no, this video isn't about her, but I just want you to think for a second and consider that perhaps her existence has more meaning than one would first expect. Okay, so my words aren't helping me right now, but I really am trying to stay vague about it because I have this theory about her and why she exists. Right now, everyone who has an opinion on her is pretty much saying the same thing, and I don't want to blow their minds with something I doubt anyone has even considered. I have a theory, and I might one day upload a video just about her, but I'll leave it at that for now. So no, this video isn't about her, so you can cast that from your minds. I could talk about how I don't find Tom or Andy or Aubrey from Parks and Recreation funny at all, and that diminutive, unfunny, unmanly, so-called comedian, I'm talking about Aziz, who just shouts the latter part of his quote-unquote jokes, to me, is now unworthy of my attention. How the hell did he sell out Madison Square Garden? I don't find anything he says on Parks funny at all, and his latest special at Madison Square Garden wasn't funny to me at all. Again, no, this video isn't about him, and I doubt I'll ever spend a whole video talking about him. Last try. And thanks for bearing with me. I could talk about how Bailey and Sasha Banks from NXT is just garbage in terms of psychology and logic. I could pick apart that match and enlighten all those marks out there on why that match was just so disappointing to watch for someone like me, and I couldn't even watch the whole thing. The last moment I watched of that match was Bailey stupidly suplexing Sasha on the outside onto the mat after momentum pushed them away from the mat. Seriously, I loathed that match the more I watched of it. At the end, Bailey got a standing ovation and recognition from all of her peers. It was in a highlights package on the next NXT. It really does suck being the only one who thinks this way. Anyway, the absence of logic, the undoing of their chemistry that they displayed at the previous event in Brooklyn was just too much for me to bear. I do, however, have a theory as to why the match went down the way it did, and this was due to the possible real-life injury that Sasha Banks suffered, and everything they wanted to do was thrown out of the window because she wasn't physically able to perform to that level. As you can hear, I have varied interests just like everyone else, but these previous subjects aren't what I'm going to be talking about today. No, today I'm going to be talking about former in-ring wrestler Daniel Bryan, otherwise known as American Dragon Bryan Danielson, and why I believe karma revenged him for his past indiscretions against other in-ring performers and pro wrestlers. He's currently injured with a serious neck injury which prevents him from wrestling for that soulless company he works for. As far as I know, he's still not cleared to return to in-ring action, and you know what? I feel it is deserved. In my opinion, he deserves to be deprived of returning to in-ring action and sports entertaining, starving his fans of seeing him in action, those marks who are clearly brainwashed into wanting him to succeed. I'll come right out and say it. I don't like Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson as a wrestler. I'm sure he's an awesome person in real life. He obviously cares about this planet, and he should say something about the overpopulation of the human race. Him caring about the planet is wonderful, but as a wrestler, and that's the part I'm focused on, he's abhorrent. And I'm glad he no longer actively wrestles. I'm happy he's unable to wrestle as of right now. Now, I'm not glad he's injured, and I hope you can believe me when I say he makes a full recovery, because I'm not entirely vindictive towards him. I love the art of professional wrestling, and as a whole, I feel the whole industry is better off without him. So, is that clear to any of you yes marks? I'm not happy he's injured, I'm happy he's not actively wrestling and destroying his opponent's aura. Want to know why this is my opinion of him? If you don't want to know and you love Daniel Bryan and you mark out every time he sports entertains, then you best close this video and watch something else. Preferably something where he's shown in a more flattering light, like when he beat a watered down Triple H at WrestleMania, because I'm about to answer my own question and reveal my opinion about this poorly trained, professional brainwashing sports entertainer. After years of making other wrestlers look like incompetent fools, I breathe in a sigh of relief and feel so relieved that he isn't cleared to walk through the curtain and step through the ropes and then sports entertain to whatever limit Vinny allows him. I'll give you a typical match of this sports entertainer from years past, back when he was known as American Dragon, and he was cultivating love from wrestling fans despite not being a great worker. Oh, my throat's been terrible today. Yes, there's a difference in my mind about being a great worker and a great wrestler. Cynical wrestling fans will know what I mean. Hopefully. I could either use his match with Samoa Joe in 2004 as an example, or his match with Nigel McGuinness from 2007. This might actually be worth more than one video, as he has so many glaring mistakes in his earlier career, before he was signed to that sports entertainment company run by an absolute idiot with a bodybuilder fetish and a screeching hollow corporate stooge. Here are some general glaring mistakes that Bryan Danielson is guilty of. He was trained wrong after idolizing Shawn Michaels. Before Shawn was a major champion, he knew how to sell his pain in a wrestling ring and knew how to work a match and get the crowd invested in him. Danielson didn't do this, or doesn't do this, despite being minimally trained by Shawn. Bryan doesn't understand psychology and chooses to show off how tough he is by taking a stiff shot, then giving one back. After absorbing the hit, he does not sell. If he isn't worried about the hit, or showing that it affects him, then why should I worry that he's in trouble? Does he have small man syndrome, and if he sells or allows his opponent to beat on him for more than a few minutes, will the crowd think that he's a pussy? Next point, he has stupid chants where the crowd says he's going to kick his opponent's head in. This shows he has swayed the crowd into thinking he's so tough because he doesn't sell, and that because he's over, because the crowd loves him, plural, he can be dominant despite being a vanilla midget. Maybe people like him because he thinks he treats wrestling with the reverence it once deserved, and because he's short, and he's nothing like what the bigger wrestling companies want the fans to like. Too many S's there. I have made notes about his match with Nigel McGuinness from 2007, uh, an event called Driven, and they are as follows from the beginning. I should say he looked rather idiotic standing halfway down the cheap-looking ramp with that expression that said, "Look how hard I am and you all love me." Ugh. Anyway, after the opening mat wrestling portion, Brian applies a bow and arrow hold. This was pointless because a smart guy like me knows Nigel is going to maneuver out of it, and Brian did not first wear down the back with multiple moves and attacks for a better and more meaningful effect. Why couldn't he try a pinning combination instead? Why bother with mat wrestling to begin the contest? Is it to show just how much their actions escalated? Doesn't doesn't it make sense? This doesn't make sense, and later I'll suggest a reason why. Brian slaps Nigel like a heel. Why did he get cheered for that? Why wrestle in the beginning if you were only going to slap him afterwards? Did the idiot think he was going to win the whole match with just mat wrestling? Was he trying to lure Nigel into a false sense of security? Was he trying to earn a sliver of respect? It defies logic to do this. If you loathe someone enough to slap them, then why would you begin with wrestling? That's the same point verbalized more than once, because Brian is an amateur as it pertains to psychology. He kicks Nigel, who is on his knees, more than a few times, igniting another round of chants from the crowd. When Brian is kicked, he takes a minimal amount of damage from them because he's a pussy and knows if he falls... Actually, he takes a minimal amount of kicks and knows that if he falls, that result prevents him from enduring any more kicks, yet he doesn't allow Nigel the chance to fall back. He doesn't allow Nigel that privilege of not taking any more kicks. No, Nigel has to sit up and take the kicks. I have a lot of respect for Nigel, but why doesn't he realize that Brian has no concept of logic or psychology? I'm sure at this point no one agrees with me, but oh well. Brian whips Nigel into the corner and takes a mule kick. He falls and acts surprised and ever so slightly winded. He does not reference or gingerly touch the area of his body where he was hit. He just half sits up like a simpleton and inhales with his eyes wide open. That's selling, apparently, and other idiot wrestlers sell exactly the same as this. Selling is not falling and then sitting up and appearing surprised and mouth breathing. In ROH, and ROH is about the wrestling, a wrestler will invoke more sympathy when he shows he's in pain. This wills the crowd into wanting to see him triumph and overcome. This is somewhat of a weak point I just realized because Brian is over with the crowd because they just kept shouting and chanting, but his bullshit approach has brainwashed everyone into thinking his way is the right way. He's acting like a heel and a total dick, yet he's receiving a positive response. It's absurd. These fans are too far gone and are total marks. Again, if Brian doesn't appear to be in pain, if he doesn't sell, then why should I care about him? Oh, does wrestling like these two not leave you feeling any lingering pain? Does said pain only last a few seconds? Yeah, that was sarcasm, if you didn't know. Is Brian Wolverine with unbreakable bones and a healing factor? Oh no, wait, no, he's not because his neck is injured. Silly me. Nigel applies a beautiful, arm-destroying hold, and Brian does the right thing and yells in pain. Probably because it really hurt. But as soon as the hold is released, the magic is stolen away. Brian, the nonce, makes another ludicrous mistake that I hope haunts him until he's old and grey. Seeing no reason to sell his arm, which wasn't worked over but was in a truly painful hold, it really was, Brian stupidly, instantly, rolls forward and applies his own unimpressive, illogical hold, which was a surfboard chin lock. This earns him boos from the crowd, but he shows how much he cares by digging his knee into Nigel's back and wrenching on the hold even harder, like it shows just how great and hard and tough and super he is. This is wrong on so many levels. He's using the previously targeted arm and shoulder to apply the hold, and by using it without any pain or difficulty, this undermines Nigel's beautiful arm and shoulder stretching hold. It's criminal because it makes the opponent look stupid and weak, and worthless with ineffective moves. It sucks, really. Brian also kept the impulsively applied hold for longer, a lot longer than Nigel kept his applied, for the sole purpose of asserting himself again and showing pure dominance. Such an awful display of storytelling and logic clearly demonstrates that he's an idiot who only cares about being over. Go ahead and watch that part of the match and you'll see that I'm right. Brian takes a lariat across the chest and falls onto the mat before quickly scurrying away outside. Yes, he falls to one knee outside and waits for Nigel to advance on him, but why didn't Brian stay inside, or move a lot slower? Surely the lariat from an arm that hasn't been worked over would keep the moron down for longer than a second or even nearly 2 seconds. Surely, but not in Brian's head. Brian took some European uppercuts, and while he does take them well, he didn't reference them. That wasn't the correct grammar. At least he took them, that's something. Next, the idiot takes a running forearm, a running European uppercut in the corner on the outside, as Nigel receives approval from the crowd. Brian stupidly regains control by hitting European uppercuts of his own. Why? I'll tell you why. I'll impress upon you the reason why Brian decided that was the perfect time to regain control. Because he has a small dick and a big ego and no understanding of wrestling psychology. That's why. When he does the exact same strikes to Nigel, he is silently telling the crowd that he can hit them harder and meaner and better than his opponent. This conveys that he can stop an opponent from dominating him by copying their strikes. Doing this is a weak attempt at domineering, and here, Brian utilizes it so well against the very talented Nigel McGuinness. This undermines Nigel's previous strikes to Brian, stealing his uppercuts. In wrestling, you're not supposed to really hit your opponent, but make it look like you're hitting them hard. Brian hit them hard, and yes, Nigel said it was okay as they were creating the match together in the back, planning it together. But to hit them that hard after receiving some from Nigel was just so wrong. Remember that Brian received a lariat? You do? Well, he's not selling it or allowing it to slow him down and make me give a shit about him. If you don't remember, then I don't blame you. Brian is so tough, he makes Wolverine from X-Men look like a pussy. Brian used a chair on Nigel, throwing it at his head. Not only is this dangerous, but it is unnecessary and unneeded for the match. Does Brian doubt his own wrestling ability can stand up to Nigel's arsenal? Or is Brian trying to show that he can still be over despite doing heelish things? I would say it's both, but it's still so wrong. If he is going to throw a chair at Nigel's head, then why did he wrestle Nigel in the beginning? It doesn't make sense. Why is he cheered when he acts like a heel? Why does he continue to defy logic? In ROH, are there no faces and heels, good guys and bad guys? Is there only, well, if you like this wrestler and what he does, then cheer. If not, then boo. Just as long as you make noise. I guess Brian's fans will cheer him regardless. So brainwashed. There's such marks for this bad wrestler in my opinion. Brian lifts up the announcer's table and throws it, landing it on Nigel's head. A dangerous move to subject to your opponent when concussions aren't a made-up thing. This is so wrong for a guy who is so over... Let me start that again. This is so wrong for a guy who is over to do, yet he receives cheers for this horrid act. What the hell is wrong with this crowd? Do they just hate Nigel for even being in the ring with their short hero? I think they might be bloodthirsty. Yep, totally bloodthirsty. As Nigel is forced to stay down for a brief period, Brian walks around like he's so awesome, and he appears fresh, unscathed so far in the hard-hitting match, not selling anything. This far into the match, and he's fine. He doesn't appear to be in any pain. Does he need to suffer a neck injury, a real-life injury sustained from sports entertaining, before he sells and feels pain? Yes, he does. He does need to, the awful wrestler that he is. Look, he's proving nothing by not selling any offense sustained in the match so far. If anything, he's showing that nothing hurts him, and that wrestling is a fake endeavor, and this breaks the illusion of wrestling. This is becoming quite the long video, so I'll leave it there for now and continue on with it another day. I'll say this before I leave. My mindset towards wrestling might be and could be viewed as archaic, and I'm okay with that. It sure as hell does not mesh with the mindset of today's wrestling marks, as they see it very differently to what I do. I understand that people watch wrestling and interpret it with varying results. But this is the internet, and I want to voice my opinion. Hearing these cheers for Brian is frustrating, and I honestly wish he would receive boos, or silence, and nothing else. Or maybe just silence. I wonder how he'd react to that. These marks who love these types of matches sure do love stunt shows, don't they? If they didn't, they would boo the Young Bucks, and Tommy End, and the awful Kyle O'Reilly. Oh, if only the fans would stay silent for the duration of these stunt shows, and force the wrestlers to comprehend psychology. I love pro wrestling, and I really feel that Brian deserves to be on the sidelines, and watch helplessly as the business moves on without him. His past matches defied logic and common sense and hate, and I feel a sense of satisfaction knowing he is nowhere near a ring because he is unable to wrestle. Anyway, horrible matches of his are immortalized for future generations to watch, and if these future wrestlers follow in his footsteps and subscribe to Daniel Bryan's or Bryan Danielson's deeply flawed mindset and philosophy, then wrestling as a whole will be worse off. Last thing, I don't care if he doesn't sell in that dumb company that he sustained the neck injury in, because it's not a wrestling promotion. That garbage, which is currently suffering from low attendance to its garbage events that aren't Raw and pay-per-views, is sports entertainment, something that should be considered separate from pro wrestling. Wrestling logic does not apply here. I hope you're now smarter after having watched this video. Adios.